It's funny, there's some of those pop machines, those little bubble machines that have toys in them from these companies where they're still collectible. And you can go and find this one little fake wrestler guy.
Right.
But because there was only 200 of them made ever, it's still collectible. Yeah, you could put it on eBay, and this tiny little trinket that's not even WWE wrestlers.
Yeah.
It's
just Wrestler Man.
Yeah.
Brand. Wrestlers.
WrestleMan with just R-E-S-T-L-E.
Russell Man.
Russell Man.
RUSSELMAN.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 12 of the FoundryCast. I'm Cyrus.
And I'm Zach.
And we're back again. We're working our way through a rather frigid month. It's been chilly out there.
Yeah, we've had some snow.
Almost a foot.
Fallen.
Did you get about a foot over here?
No, we got 5 inches, maybe 6.
Or maybe I've just seen drifts of about a foot. And definitely
drifted in some places, yeah.
And the ice has been crazy as well.
Yeah, that's been the main thing. It's been frigid cold, and whatever fell has turned to just rock solid ice.
I basically enjoy wearing t-shirts, but I've been having to wear hoodies and thermals and all kind of warm things just to get through. And we're still rocking through Battle Month.
Battle Month. It's January. It's Battle Month.
We're battling.
It's Battle Month.
I think we need to turn it up a notch, though. I think it's been a lot of fun with some of the ideas we've created. We're also looking down the road a little bit, but I want to get into some fisticuffs, maybe of a digital nature, or we may need to find some foam swords and
whomp on each other,
get some friends together, because that's one thing we were talking before about LARPing, and I think that would be a lot of fun. However,
I agree.
If I was going to a legit LARP, with people who've done this before, I would want to do more weapons training before I go.
Oh yeah,
because the martial arts that I'm taking, the style of combat goes for me and another unarmed assailant, or a person who has the same weapon as me.
Yeah, it's not sword and shield versus guy with a spear.
Right, and plus it's not sword combat. Shaolin martial arts that the Shorin is based off of.
Yeah.
It's not swords.
Right.
It's bow staff. It's something used to thresh wheat. It's not a fancy nobility weapon.
Right.
So is there you think there's a trainer around here that could teach me how to whomp on someone with a sword?
There might be. I'll check the wiki.
Yeah,
and we'll see. I'm sure there's a location nearby that we can bookmark and head to.
Because that's the thing. I'm going to go out there against someone who is, not the specimen that I am.
Right.
He's still going to beat up on me because he knows he just needs to twirl his sword around. He's going to poke me in the eye with it. Well, I'm trying to do epic swings and.
Well, that's when you reach in your pocket, pull out the beanbag, and go firebolt, and
it's like,
hit him square between the eyes.
Like, of course I did. That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
So I go in there and say, "My name is Gerald the Great," and they think, "That dude, he's a fighter." Okay. You walk over at me. "Oh, I'm wearing leathers. I'm not wearing armor. I'm actually a wizard."
Yeah.
Fireball.
Or you
I bet that's cheating.
You could be a battle mage. You could have a sword in one hand and a spell in the other. Use the spell to get in close and bam, finish him with a sword. Or you could just bring a lightsaber and they would throw you out. But not before you decapitated someone.
Yeah, in real life. We're sitting just a few weeks away from WWE's Royal Rumble.
I'm super excited.
I'm really, really excited. I think we hinted at it the previous podcast. January 29th, coming out of the Alamo Dome. It's going to be a lot of fun. This is one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time.
Yeah.
WrestleMania is a big deal.
Yeah.
But when they came up with the Royal Rumble concept, the managers at the time didn't think it was a good idea, and it finally went through enough channels where someone said, "Hey, we need to give this thing a try." And it's been almost 30 years.
I love the format. It's like
maybe 20 some odd years.
It's the thing about WrestleMania is it's you get the big matches and they're a lot of fun. But I love a Royal Rumble gimmick match where it's just chaos in the ring and there's so much room. It feels more inherently silly.
To a degree, yes.
And I get a lot of entertainment from that, where it's just like, craziness, anything can happen. It's not, and there's enjoyment, like I said, in one-on-one, like, oh, they're locked in for the title, but, Royal Rumble is just fun.
It's a lot more fun, and what I like about it is, and go ahead and put a disclaimer out there, we recognize that it is sports entertainment. We recognize that 95% of what happens in the ring is planned. There are things that happen that are not planned, which makes it very real life. The athleticism is top notch, and that's one of the things that drives us. And the stories that are built out of Royal Rumble are one of the things that really interest me, because it's a way to have people lock up in the middle of the ring that normally wouldn't unless it was a throwaway match, which is a waste of talent.
Yeah, you get a chance to mix up a lot of people you wouldn't otherwise. Yeah, you wouldn't do a main event at WrestleMania, but they can have a quick 2-minute thing at Royal Rumble. Yeah.
Or it starts a feud, or continues a feud, which is part of what they're really building up to this year. There are some predictions, one of which being there would be no celebrity entrance. I think last year they threw Shaquille O'Neal or some.
Shaquille O'Neal was in it because they were setting up his fight with
Or he was at the previous WrestleMania.
Was it the previous one?
There was a Battle Royal. I think he may have been in that. It was something.
He was in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal.
That's right. Yeah, but I think there aren't going to be any celebrities, but. They've already put in some big name talent this year, which really excites me. The first I think he was the first person to even put his name in the ring, and that's Goldberg.
That's really cool. Yeah, I know he just came back not long ago, and to have him in a Royal Rumble is going to be a lot of fun.
And he's been out of the ring for, 10 years? 10
years, yeah.
10 years easily.
Probably.
Had a match with Brock Lesnar, which was very fast.
Oh, I got to see it finally. I did get to see it. It was really fun.
Put Goldberg over in a believable enough way that Brock has a reason to come back and kick the crap out of him. But also, Brock Lesnar is going to be in the Royal Rumble.
Really cool.
Big E, Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, my boys.
All right.
From the New Day.
You think they'll come in one after another?
They're going to chunk them up a little bit. Because it'd be a little unfair. All three of them are going to work one person.
You would assume they team up, but yeah.
The thing about Kofi Kingston, and I don't remember if they even had him in the Royal Rumble last year, he does the most amazing stunts where he gets chunked out. He's out. But he does a handstand. His feet never touch.
Oh, yeah.
Or he gets thrown out and he lands on the railing.
Yeah, and vaults back in.
Or he's wrestling somebody and lands on them, never touches the ground, jumps off them back in the ring. Yeah. He's always been a phenomenal
really cool.
entrant, because if he's there, something really cool, he's not going to win. But something cool is going to happen.
Yeah, that's one thing about the Royal Rumble is you can look at the list and say, none of these guys are going to win. But like I said, it's about the fun of the event.
It is.
I don't really care who wins.
Seth Rollins is my...
Is Seth Rollins in it?
Dude, yeah.
Awesome.
Now, there are going to be other matches that some of these people are doubling up. They're fighting for a championship, but then they're also going to be in the Royal Rumble, which is weird because the winner of the Royal Rumble gets a number one contenders match at WrestleMania.
Right.
It's been done before where it's been champion versus champion or something like that. So that's why they've got a few other people. I think The Miz just dropped the title to somebody else so that he could be in this.
What is he, Intercontinental?
He was Intercontinental. I think he lost it to Dolph Ziggler, who's being a bad guy again.
I thought The Miz was a bad guy.
Oh, yeah.
So bad guy versus bad guy? All right.
Well, whatever. Now that they're over, he's being a bad guy. But Seth Rollins is the person that I would imagine could win it. However, there's usually one person who's considered the Iron Man of the match. They may not be the first person in, but they're in the first couple. Yeah. And they survive everybody until towards the very end. Yeah. And they're just the worker. The person who puts over really cool stunts. Yeah. Who makes it believable that they're beating the crap out of each other. Yeah. And I think that's going to be Seth Rollins. I don't think he's going to win.
I hope he does. I don't know. I'm a huge Seth Rollins mark. I love him to death.
Oh, and yeah. He's won me over just for his comeback. The same thing that happened with Triple H. Triple H I always respected as a wrestler, but his comeback after tearing his quad clean off. Yeah. I saw that match. I knew something was wrong with his leg. I didn't know what until the VHS came out, and I got to see the tape. But, Seth Rollins is the man. So, it's going to be a lot of fun. I like to have people over who enjoy wrestling for what it is, who want to have fun, because you never know what retired wrestler, wrestler from another company comes over.
Yeah.
Because that's how when AJ Styles debuted last year.
Did he debut at the Royal Rumble?
He debuted at the Royal Rumble. He came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And the crowd, the smart marks who knew who he was, were expecting him to show up sometime.
Yeah, and just probably starting in NXT as well, right? And then
he skipped NXT.
Yeah, he just came straight in.
Oh no, cool. He is. Now, he did have to work kind of slowly to get in because his moves a little too dangerous, for WWE, and a little too fast. Yeah, he's way quick, and he had to learn the slightly slower pace of the WWE. WWE has a lot more of this plotting, plot based. We're going to get to that move at some point.
Yeah, that's one thing I'll say, just as an aside. New Year's Eve, actually, is what it was, because that's when I was up so late. Watch the ball drop or whatever. I don't really care. But after that, after the stupid whatever shows went off, they started playing Ring of Honor.
Ring of Honor, dude.
Have you ever watched Ring of Honor?
Oh, yeah, I know all about it.
It's crazy. I've never watched them before. Oh, my God. They had a ladder match, and they did a spot where they had the ladder up on the ropes. Yeah. And then there was there was a second ladder, and he put him through both ladders. It was just, like that extreme, it wasn't like extreme wrestling, like throw him on a pile of thumbtacks, hit him with but it was just like WWE turned up to 12.
Yeah, and Ring of Honor is one of those companies where it's a little rougher. The participants are not quite as polished.
Yeah, it's very unpolished.
And I don't necessarily mean the production values. I mean the wrestlers themselves. Yeah. They don't necessarily know how to sell everything the way they should. Yeah. However, there are people who didn't like being in the WWE or didn't like being in TNA. One of the top stars right now in Ring of Honor is Jay Lethal. Jay Lethal was in TNA. And he had these cornrows, and he's just this crazy athlete who can do anything and everything he puts his mind to. Yeah. But he was never over. He may have been in WWE, but he was definitely in TNA. Never got over. Nobody liked him, except knew he was a good guy. Hits TNA, works hard for about a year.
Right on.
Champion. Then they put him up against some dopey bad guys, the Bullet Club, who AJ Styles was one of the members of, as were Gallows and Anderson, who are now a tag team in WWE. Now they're shaving Jay Lethal's head, so they're trying to hey, look, we're a bad guy. We're torturing the good guy by getting rid of his stupid haircut, making him look good. And he has all head shaved, clean ball. I'm oh, that's a good looking one you got on you there, bro. Good job. Ring of Honor is a lot of fun.
Really
My wife can't stand it because it doesn't have the same diva level. Or that the women are really unpolished.
I've since seen a little bit of the lady stuff, and
can't hold a candle to
that makes
my
sense.
Girl Charlotte.
Oh man, Charlotte
Bailey
is so good.
And Sasha Banks.
That makes sense though. In the pool of, I'm assuming that the pool of women's wrestler talent is probably a lot smaller. So. Once you get past WWE, the depth is pretty much gone.
There are some out there, and they're working their way up. And they've been in shows such as Glow or Glitter or even TNA. Some of these women are 5-star athletes that just don't have the look. And I don't necessarily mean being attractive, just they haven't figured out their style.
Charlotte has a look, which I'm not saying she's unattractive, but she's not I'm sexy Charlotte. She just looks really intimidating.
And I've seen her in real life, and you wouldn't know it. Get her glammed up like that, and hello, Charlotte.
She's a big girl.
Again, when we were sitting in psychology class together, she wasn't wearing those sparkly outfits.
Right, yeah, she wasn't wearing that.
It was hoodies and jeans. And
I still like to imagine that every time she entered the class, she went...
She may have under her breath. If I knew who she was when I first met her, I would have wooed at her every time she walked in the door.
I'm sure she would have appreciated that. Alright, so Cyrus, it's Battle Month, January here.
You can just skip Battle Month unless you...
No, I just want to mention one more time.
Okay.
All right, so like we talked about at the top of the show, it is Battle Month, and we're trying to kind of put some of our segments tonight around that theme. I had a quick one for you, just a quick, what do you think, opinion sort of deal. What's your favorite, from any fantasy, sci-fi, just say any nerdy series, what's your favorite weapon?
I've got a ton of these.
Hero or villain used?
Oh, because it depends on, sci-fi or fantasy, high fantasy, low fantasy. One of them, or two of them, come from the same series, and that's Farscape.
Okay.
The blasters they use, I think, are some of the sleekest on television. They had, no moving parts. They didn't even really have a trigger mechanism, I don't believe, in the working prop. But it was black, it looked sleek, and the main character, he had one that he named Winona. And this is like the standard Peacekeeper issue weapon that everybody in the peacekeeping, any peacekeepers would use. Yeah. But he could tell which was his. So he could, that's Winona. He could tell by the weight. He could tell by how she fired. He would occasionally talk to her. That was always something cool, and that's one of those replicas that I want to get someday and have painted if it doesn't already come that way. In the same series, there was a character, kind of the Klingon of that universe, a Luxon, named Dargo, and his warrior class used something called a Quelta blade, and it is a sword that turns into a rifle. So it was a prop that they were promised to give him at some point, but they always had to do a turn away from the shot, and then all of a sudden it's together. But basically, you twist these things, the blade opens up, and it fires a beam out from inside the blade. Looks like a really cool rifle in that form. As a sword, it looks kind of fat and heavy. Doesn't look like it's really going to cut anybody. But it was still a very warrior-type weapon. It looked very classy, kind of gold and copper embossed. I always thought that was cool. What about you?
Actually, just talking about that reminded me of a weapon that I can never decide if I love or hate in Stargate. And I don't, now that I'm thinking back to the series, I don't even know if they had a name for it. Forgive me, Stargate fans, but the staff.
Oh,
that they used, because you could womp people with it because it's a staff, but then they would swing it down and it would shoot little laser beams. Which it always seemed really inaccurate to me, because how are you going to aid in something you're holding at your hip? But kind of a dual use weapon that's kind of along the same token that I always thought was interesting.
Of course, we both love lightsabers.
Lightsabers is kind of the easy answer to this, I think.
But it's still an elegant weapon for an elegant time.
For a more civilized age, absolutely. Along the same token, the phaser, especially the phasers from Next Gen, because they're multi-tools. They're not just, it's a weapon, but they would use them to cut a hole in a rock or, melt stone to create heat in a room or something like that.
If your weapon does what... It fires some sort of a laser or energy or plasma, it would be a multi-purpose tool. That makes sense. I never liked the design of them, though. I think they could have done much better. They always tried to make their weapons look science fiction-y.
Yeah, they're very out there, sort of let's make it look strange, let's make it look different. The hand phasers in Next Gen especially, they look very 90s, which is really interesting.
They're so dopey, and it doesn't look accurate that I'm going to fire at you.
Again, same thing as how are you going to hit something with that little stick? I think another one of my favorites, going back to video games.
I was going to assume you were going to say the Master Sword?
No, actually. Although I like the Master Sword.
Because you're a huge Zelda fan.
I'm a big Zelda fan. But I'm thinking of, in Doom, a couple of weapons in Doom. The BFG.
The Bufaga?
The BFG is great. Shoots little green balls that kill them. But the plasma rifle in Doom, the original Doom, just woo, and it shoots out a stream of blue laser shots. Oh, I love that gun.
Well, I always like big guns, but... there are always different versions, and unless they fire in some kind of cool way, I'm like, okay, it's just another rocket launcher, it's just another, sniper rifle. And I always like sniper rifles in some of the war-based games. But when it comes to the hand melee combat, the Master Sword is always one of my favorites because in the game, I've never heard of swinging a sword that was so magical that it could fire a shot, like
a laser
fire
beam
itself out. Like, that was so cool for the time. Like, a sword shoots out a laser?
Yeah.
And then something else that I just love the design of it. It's very elegant. The Sword of Omens from Thundercats.
Oh, yeah.
Lionel's sword.
And you hold it up and you look through the little,
And it kind of allowed him to channel his vision.
Very cool, yeah.
Get the far sight.
Yeah.
And it sort of powered up with him. Like the, whatever the sword was. It's called the Power Sword was He-Man's sword. Like, what a terrible name for a blade.
Yeah,
Power Sword.
Dull, yeah.
Even though the Master Sword for Zelda isn't that much better.
By that same token, when talking about swords, I'm a big fan of Glamdring, which is Gandalf's sword. The movie version, also, of course, in the book, it's just a written word, so you get to think of it how it looks in your own mind. But the film version,
it's beautiful.
Is just really beautifully crafted. And it was long. It just looked like a cool fantasy sword. I think my number one, though, I'm going to go ahead and say, because I've got a prop of it sitting over there, Deckard's Blaster from Blade Runner.
I think Deckard's Blaster is on par, in my mind, as far as the look of it, the weight of it, compared to the Farscape guns. But the Farscape guns are slicker.
But they're still, like, chunky.
But his gun is it seems like it's from a darker period, where technology is still kind of raw and rough.
What I like, it's heavy, it's big, and it's big and heavy in a way that it reminds me of a sword, like a fantasy,
sidearm.
Because if you're really drawing a big broadsword, they're heavy and they're chunky, and so it's like when he draws his gun in the film, it's like this big heavy thing that he's going to swing around. It's not like a machine gun or the laser gun. It's not a phaser. It's not light and delicate.
It's a light phaser.
It's and I'm going to start firing. Yeah, it's a cool design. It's the actual prop itself was like a really neat hodgepodge of actual firearm parts. Really cool prop.
It seems like when it fires, it would be very satisfying.
Kickback.
It
had a lot of kick. Yeah,
or just the control of the weight of the thing. It's got to have a good weight to it. Yeah. And back to lightsabers. That's what I always imagined, that the lightsaber hilt itself still has weight to it, even if the blade itself doesn't. Because you want it to have some weight when you're swinging and it wouldn't, because it's just pure energy. It's not going to have weight to it.
In the EU explanation of that was like, because of the way that it held the plasma in some sort of magnetic whatever, it would create resistance to movement, and that's kind of where they got the weight from the swing. But yeah.
So in the game of choose your weapon, I think we're both well armed for battle with the Denzians to come bursting through the door.
Absolutely. As long as they're replicants, I'm safe.
When we come together, we usually record a few minutes of ourselves, kind of warming up, coming up with some ideas. And I don't know if any of it will make it into this FoundryCast. We were talking about video games, and especially our love of a local cinema that had a great little arcade over the top, and some of the games you were playing there. And I've got to say that part of growing up in the 80s, and even some of the 90s, and I can't imagine what it was like before that, the proliferation of arcades and getting to go and play these games with your friends in a different way than you would now bring them to your house. But meeting downtown, maybe your parents drive you out there, maybe you just got a car, and you're still going and plugging quarters into the arcade. And, you're going to play your Ninja Turtle game. You're going to play your Simpsons game. But where we normally threw down the most money was the fighting games.
Yeah. I don't know. You're talking about, early 80s, mid 80s arcade scene. I think we both were too young, didn't really get to enjoy what a lot of people consider golden age of arcades. But really what you're talking about, the fighting game period of arcades, was right in our wheelhouse. You're talking very late 80s and into the early 90s.
Right.
With Street Fighter, with Mortal Kombat, with Primal Rage we mentioned earlier.
Primal Rage.
All those games. They really, that style of game really didn't come around until 80.
It was truly Street Fighter 2 that set it all off, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of other games, 1-versus-1, like karate fighting games before Street Fighter, or Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter was a good example.
Yeah, Street Fighter.
Was Street Fighter ever in the arcade? I don't remember.
It was, and there was other games like Pit Fighter, but they usually weren't as based on player versus player. It was still... It was martial arts based, but it was fighting the computer opponent.
Yeah,
occasionally
still,
you would have me versus you, but the storyline was still Double Dragon style. We're going to go and fight the bad guys, maybe together.
Yeah, I mean, Double Dragon is a good example of like a side-scrolling beat-em-up, but they evolved into really starting with Street Fighter 2, that 1-versus-1 sort of aspect, and it became... That became the thing. Is you took your quarter and you put it up on the top of the arcade to mark your spot in line. And I don't know, my experience. I rarely did it, honestly, because my experience was always I would go to the Aladdin's Castle, which was the arcade over here in one of the malls nearby, and Mortal Kombat and later Mortal Kombat 2. There would always be the one kid who was like 14, 15 years old, and at the time I was probably 7 or 8. Who was really good at the game, and he knew all the moves for all the characters. He knew the fatality, and so you would have a line of kids waiting to play him, just him, because he would always win, and if you won, you got to keep playing. So
I remember that, and I remember just part of my competitive nature didn't really blossom until after this. But I was at some water park. And it had a solo Mortal Kombat machine out in this covered area, and that was,
excuse me,
Mortal Kombat was a big deal. But there were still places where it was kind of taboo, and for this to just be out there where I could play with no judgment, and I didn't feel like, I'm playing that scary bloody game that my mom would like me playing. Yeah. And I had about 75 cents and played through a little bit. And had gotten decently far, and I need another quarter. And my friend is 15 feet away. I run over, grab a quarter. From the 10 countdown, it might be down to 3. Yeah. This 15-year-old kid just slides up, throws his quarter in, and keeps playing on mine.
Over your
Dude,
game.
There were people standing around watching me play. Yeah. They knew I was coming right back. And he just ignored me as if I didn't exist and kept playing. And if I knew then what I know now, I probably would have kicked him in the shin or something, knocked the joystick out of his hand so he couldn't play or something. Because that was a jerk move, if ever there was one.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing is with fighting games that your opponent wasn't the game anymore; it was the other player in the arcade.
Which is fun if he had just decided to jump on the joystick beside me, because he probably would have wiped the floor with me. Right. I don't even remember what character I was playing with because I hadn't developed a favorite. I think Raiden was one that a lot of people played with because some of the coolest moves. Yeah. I'm just going to teleport over here.
Yeah, fly through the air, shoot lightning. Yeah.
What other memories do you have of playing those fighting games? Did you ever get into a tournament? Did you ever?
No, I was never. I wasn't very good at fighting. Still have never been good at fighting games. So it wasn't my thing, and like I said, I was always like the younger kid who I would watch the older kids play each other, and I remember watching, especially Mortal Kombat, because it had that mystique about it when it came out, where it was like, I shouldn't play that. It's my parents will get mad at me if I play. So I would watch other people play it because I didn't feel like I was allowed to play it, but I would watch it.
Well, that game had so much mystique for the time because it was one of the first to have real hidden content.
Yeah.
So be able to unlock characters and unlock moves that it's not written down there how to do a fireball. You just kind of learn how to do the kick with this one guy.
And you have to wait for when the shadow moves over the moon, and then you can access Reptile and all that stuff that's in there. I remember hearing people debate in the arcade about that kind of stuff.
And then when it came to the home port, you could spend a lot of time trying to unlock it.
You could actually focus on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I remember we would play Mortal Kombat 3 for hours and hours at night. And we had rules. You could play as Smoke, but you couldn't play as Shao Kahn or none of the cheating monster characters. Yeah. But even then, we would say, okay, Smoke's overpowered. Smoke is now illegal. Play with anybody else. But my friend memorized all the codes, so he could just rock out to do unlock all the levels, unlock all the characters. He could just pop it out. And he was the same way with all these moves. So when we would play Killer Instinct, it was insane. He would get these brutal combinations.
Yeah.
And I was like, just punching, kicking, and jumping. Which I always thought was kind of the fun of some of those fighting games. Some of like the Virtua Fighter series.
I was going to say that was one game that I had for my PS2. It was Virtua Fighter, like 4EX or I don't know, so I'd have to go back and look. But it was when fighting games really started to get really technical and move lists. Every character had 40 or 50 different moves that required 8 or 9 buttons.
But sometimes there would always be a character that was built for button mashing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The strong super. Their combos were square, square, circle.
What was the game? You could fight as a kangaroo. Tekken, in the game Tekken.
Yeah, Tekken.
And so that one had Law. He was the sort of Jackie Chan inspired fighter. He had such crazy moves that if someone you were fighting didn't know his moveset, you could pull off things that they wouldn't expect. Same thing in Fatal Fury and Samurai Showdown, those kinds of games.
Oh, I remember Samurai Showdown.
Samurai Showdown, I still have that on a port for PlayStation 2. And it's just as fun. Is it not SNK?
That's a Neo Geo game.
Yeah, Neo Geo was originally, but they ported it over. Some of those games, you could just find a character that fit your style. You didn't have to know their moveset. Just maybe 1 or 2 moves, and so you could take a defensive stance or very aggressive. So I like that even the more novice character players, just me, could still keep up with some of those guys and maybe make them lose a quarter or 2 instead.
Oh man, I can remember a quick aside story. This is super duper 90s. This is as 90s as it gets. Early 90s.
So you had your fanny pack.
I might have.
And you had the pin around your neck like when you're watching Ghost Rider.
Yeah. No, I was, we were at the arcade. I was with my brother, my older brother. And he was in did a claw machine.
Yeah.
And I was always really freaking good at claw machines, by the way. I'm great at claw machines. Anyway, of course it's all random anyway. Sort of random. Anyway, he, in the claw machine, won a necklace, a medallion, super cheap black string with a little, quarter-size medallion at the end that was the Mortal Kombat symbol.
Oh.
And there was this other kid there who was about his same age, who was like, dude, I want that so bad. And at one point he offered my brother $50 cash for it. And this is how 90s we were. My brother was like, no way, it's too rad, I'm going to keep it. And then I think he lost it a year later, but he was always like, I so regret not taking that money from that kid for that stupid little trinket.
Your brother just rode off on his rollerblades and
put his green and pink
Back to the Future sunglasses from Pizza Hut.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I had the black and pink ones.
I still have mine somewhere.
Do you?
They might even be in here.
You may need to eBay that for Retro Month.
Yeah, we might need.
All right, fanny packs and sunglasses from Pizza Hut. It is,
and a Walkman.
It's a shame that arcades aren't as big as they used to be.
It's different now.
It is different, but it was part of growing up where you were still safe. It's. I think the arcades are shown in popular media to be sketchy.
Yeah, they were early, late 70s, early 80s. They were a outshoot of pinball halls that were seen as gambling, were kind of sketchy, and but by the time we were kids in the mid to late 80s, going to arcades, they were family entertainment centers.
And you'll be lucky to find 1 or 2 arcade games at the local big movie theater.
Yeah, they're terrible.
It's a tie-in game to a movie that's been out for 8 years.
It's some racing game where one of the seats doesn't even work.
Yeah, because they don't have any love for it. As opposed to the arcade where if something goes wrong, the guy who owns the place is also a technician. He knows how to fix the TV.
He's going to open up the cabinet.
Yeah.
Change out the board.
And then he goes and has that belt where he pops
the belt with all the quarters in it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I did have a little bit of celebrity news.
Ooh, okay.
My wife actually is the person who found this. Totally shocked me. I didn't know as a lot of other nerds didn't know, Miss Felicia Day is going to be having a baby.
Oh, okay.
In about 3 weeks.
Wow.
Maybe about 2 weeks by the time this podcast comes out. She, a few days ago, posted on Twitter a picture of herself very pregnant and said, I think since it's about time to have the baby, I should let everybody know.
They have to actually tell people.
So very, very few people, except for like her internal circle, knew. I guess the way she strategized, well, she didn't want to be crass and be all about herself.
Yeah, that's really nice.
I think she's in a community of nerds who love her and accept her, that she missed out on a chance for people to really be behind her. But at the same time, I get the idea from her as a non-celebrity. She doesn't need it.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, I can definitely see she is a celebrity. Yeah. Her child doesn't need to be.
Right.
And yeah, I appreciate that in celebrities who are like, no, I'm going to keep that part of my life private. You don't need to know about it. And I don't want to know about it. If she wants to share it with me, that's great, but I don't want to know about that.
I appreciate that she's done very little with her celebrity. She could be the next big gal in movies. I think she's pretty and she's in good shape, so she could keep up with a lot of other Hollywood A-listers. I think her acting talents aren't the most amazing. I think she's very good at being genuine, and it just ends up being different shades of herself. Yeah. But then again, I've really only seen her on The Guild and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Supernatural and a few other things. But I think she's done some amazing small projects to help build up the culture that she loves so much. And so I'm very excited for her and her husband to have, I think it's a baby girl, get to... She's going to post a few pictures, hopefully, when the baby's born, and we can celebrate with her, because she's one of those celebrities that you're... Yeah, I see Jennifer Lawrence get interviewed, and for a second, I can't promise... I don't believe she's a good person.
No,
I don't know that she's not, but I don't think... Yeah. I haven't had any proof that if I met her, she would be sweet to me.
Right.
But I bet if I met Felicia Day, she'd be very nice. She'd ask me my name, look me in the eye, smile, and give me 30 seconds of her time.
Yeah, or Vin Diesel, who is another big nerd. Who I bet you could probably meet him at a convention.
Especially if you talk to him about Dungeons and Dragons, he'd probably stop and he'd probably rather talk to you than be at the award ceremony.
Exactly. He's the kind of guy who would have a hoodie on and be and would come to your panel where you're talking about D&D and I appreciate that kind of yes, I'm an actor and yes, I'm famous, but I'm a person and I enjoy my own things. I appreciate people like that a lot.
So, good luck and safe birthing to Felicia Day. We can't wait to meet your daughter someday.
Mazel tov.
Yeah. This week's Table Topics, we were kind of batting around a few things, and I really wanted to get into something that I think could punch up your game. Not exactly Battle Month related, but when it comes to games within games.
Yeah.
I don't know what experience you have playing a game within a game, such as Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder. I know you played through my miniature campaign through a sort of an Asian setting, and I created a game that was based off of logic, knowledge, intelligence, intimidation, bluffing, diplomacy, skills, as opposed to it being sort of a hand-to-hand combat. So it would be sort of like, I think I likened it to a combination of Chinese checkers and Go.
Yeah.
So you're moving tiles around on the board, and instead of 1 versus 1, it's 1 versus 1 versus 1. It's a 3-player game.
Yeah, and you're trying to capture territory. And,
capture territory, move in such a way that you are being defensive as well, or aggressive, kind of depends on your play style. And you got to pick what you wanted to do and what you wanted to try to do based off the movements of the other two characters, who were NPCs. Although I would like to extend that for Battle Month and create that in a way that...
be fun to play as player versus player as well.
Yeah, player versus player, and so you could do that. Have you ever done a player versus player game within a game?
Not that I can think of, no. Off the top of my head, no.
I think it's a fantastic way, and there's a game, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a dragon card game that was created by Wizards of the Coast, that you would go into a tavern, and these people are playing this game in the corner. It's kind of like poker, and you could join them. I love the idea that your characters go into a world where people are just trying to get by. They've worked really hard and maybe have an extra couple of coppers that they're willing to bet. And so they're going to play their version of poker. So why not buy the Liar's Dice from Pirates of the Caribbean or another version of Liar's Dice? And then everyone around the table plays that against each other as if there's a pot of money involved.
Yeah, I've thought about doing that before and just it never came up and I didn't have the time. But when I was running my Star Wars game, I might be getting the name wrong, but I think that's right. Sabak or Sabak or whatever it is.
You're saying it the way it's spelled, but
I don't know. I'm thinking of there's several video games that do this. Has become more and more common in RPGs. I think the Witcher games have a game.
Little mini games.
And Knights of the Old Republic, the original, not the new online one, but the original PC RPGs had Sabak or Sabak, or I honestly can't remember how it's pronounced. Had that within a game that you could play. But I thought about getting, because it's round cards, it's not square cards, but you can get a deck of the cards and play the game. And I thought about integrating that into an RPG. I think you can do it that way, and that would be a lot of fun. Player versus player is actually having a game within a game with a fully fleshed rule set that you get to sit down and actually play.
Right.
I think the way that you did it when we played your Asian setting Pathfinder game, it wasn't. You didn't do move by move and follow rule by rule.
Correct.
It was more of, this is what you're trying to do, roll this skill. Okay, it's been several rounds and you've made this progress.
Correct. It was more of a skills challenge as opposed to a game within a game.
That's the way I think you should do it if you're talking about playing against NPCs. Because if you do move by move, follow the rules against NPCs, it's you versus the GM. And I don't think that's as much, because it feels more personal. I'm playing you, the GM, at chess.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's, okay, roll intelligence, you've put him in a really tough end game in chess. That feels more like, I'm playing that character in the game. It keeps you a little bit removed from it, but at the same time, I think that works better for player versus NPC.
Yeah, I think it depends on what it is. For instance, in the Asian setting, it was part of a tournament.
Right.
And there were rewards for winning the tournament. And it was something that I had created a couple days before, and I was still kind of finessing it that afternoon before we got together. And then I was more than willing to change things on the fly as the game progressed.
Yeah, you should always do that as a GM anyway.
Yeah. But this was something that I was trying to create within something new, like an entire new way of doing a game, as opposed to, okay, we're going to have melee combat to see who's the victor. We're going to do a steeple run. We're going to ride horses and.
Well, yeah, I think that's another aspect that I think this sort of thing works really well for, is making aspects of a RPG into a game that aren't always.
Yeah, because it's a different set of rules. I'm not necessarily advocating that you go and reinterpret the rules, but I like the idea that you take the rules of a completely different game, something that you may have even played before, your own version of Go Fish, but instead of the Go Fish cards, you go make up your own cards.
Go Beholder.
Yeah, Go Beholder. Was it Old Maid? So it'd be Old Wench.
Yeah.
But I like the idea that your players could play against each other in a game, and then you could play as the one NPC against everybody else. So it's like a poker game. And then there could be gambling involved, and that's always fun.
Yeah, I was thinking more about changing the way you approach aspects of a game. Like before we started recording, we were talking about something you've used in a couple of your Pathfinder games is the diplomacy minigame,
which is
where
fun.
you turn, instead of diplomacy, and there's something to be said about literally RPing a diplomatic session. But you can also, if it's going to be kind of a boring or a drawn-out diplomatic session, something you don't want to RP, you can turn it into a minigame where you have, I think that one is like a set of cards laid out, and you have to work your way across the grid of cards.
That's right.
Rolling against different skills, and if you can integrate some RP into that, that's fun. I think you can do that with a lot of different things, like, you guys are trying to cross this small sea in your boat that's known for there being monsters and storms in the sea. So we're going to play this little mini game where you guys are going to roll these skills, and that helps your boat get. You can turn aspects of a game that might otherwise be dull or samey into a game within a game as well.
And there are different versions of older versions of Dungeons and Dragons that did that fairly well. And it was just, I think it was just called a skills challenge.
Yeah.
5th edition D&D and Pathfinder don't do that quite as well. But that's something that you can integrate yourself. And then if you let everybody know, this is going to be a skills challenge. We're trying to leave this, the ship is sinking and we're in the bottom, we're in the hull of the ship. We've got to get back to the top to even get off of the thing, or we're going to be trapped in here and we'll be lucky if we drown. Or we'll be unlucky if we're trapped in here and we just starve to death over weeks and weeks, or we suffocate over days and days. And you've got 10 rounds to get out.
Yeah.
So each round you have to do a skill to be successful. So you'd run into a challenge and say, all right, the door above you is locked. You've got to bust through it. Who wants to use strength or something else? Yeah. And then you have a certain amount of failures, and then once you hit that level of failures, you fail and the worst possible thing happens, or whatever you choose to do for your game. So you can add that game within a game either at a skill level or the inclusion of some other card-based actual game.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say you need to build a brand new skills challenge like I did for the Asian setting game when you happen to have a deck of cards laying around and time for some ye old medieval poker.
All right, so moving on, we're going to do a top 5 tonight. I don't think we did a top 5 last week, or did we?
I don't remember us doing the top 5 last week.
But anyway, we've been a little while. Let's do a top 5. And let's do a top 5 on board games.
Favorite board games.
Yeah, top 5 favorite, and let's make it sort of to, again, fit with the Battle Month theme. Top 10, like, battle board games. Board games where you're competitive, or maybe have a theme of battle or theme of war.
Okay. Well, I have to add, and I don't know if this affects your list, there has to be a board, or there has to be a piece.
Okay.
So a card game does not a board game equal.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
All right.
I wasn't thinking of card games necessarily.
Because I had one listed that it was one of my favorites. It's usually because I'm really good at it, or I just tend to win more often. And that's categories.
Oh, okay.
But there's no board.
Oh.
It's just cards and paper, so I'm going to strike that, but I've still got 5 more.
Okay. All right.
Well, why don't you kick us off then?
I tell you what, I'm going to start with one that may not jump to mind immediately, but I think works great as a cutthroat competitive game, and that's Monopoly. Monopoly is, if you play with the correct rules, which is very important, folks. If you haven't played Monopoly using the actual rules, go home, read the rules thoroughly, and play it that way. It's a really, really fun game.
When you play with house rules, it tends to be really askew.
It ruins the game, the balance of the game. If you play, like, the free parking gets all the... No, don't do that. Now, read the rules. It's really cutthroat. It's actually a lot faster. You know, people are like, oh, we can't build Monopoly. It'll take all night. A good game of Monopoly, 3 or 4 people, can take an hour or 2. It's a fast game.
I don't think I've ever played it under 2 hours.
It depends on the number of people.
It's been 3 hours and I'm miserable.
But I think it's a good choice.
One of my favorites that I was recently reintroduced to is Trivial Pursuit.
Ah, that's a good one, yeah.
Now, there are so many different versions of it, but just plain old Trivial Pursuit, because what they have questions about, you're really surprised they're going to ask about R&B right after they're doing Poet Laureate, right after Nobel Prize versus Cosmonaut.
Right.
Art, you just have no idea what that category is really going to bring to you.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of fair in that regard. Somebody who stinks it up the first half of the game, you hit a couple category streaks and you're back in second place.
Right, puts it right in your wheelhouse again, yeah.
And it's one that really competitive people can take very, very seriously. So everyone gets kind of white knuckle involved. And plus it's a good way to sort of I didn't know that. You learn trivia while playing.
I agree with that. That's actually a really good choice, and another one that's not doesn't necessarily jump to mind right away. Okay, I'm going to go next with another, a real classic, and this is probably one that everybody's going to think of if you think of battle board games. Risk, sure. Classic. It's a nice game. It's a nice board game because the rules are simple. When you look at war board games, there's a lot that are really complicated. Risk is super streamlined, super basic.
That's true.
Although, I think in game that is a detriment to it. I don't know that I've ever actually finished a game of Risk, because once you get far enough along where your armies are so big, it just becomes a slog.
I wonder if that's sort of like, what's the movie with Matthew Broderick? War Games.
Yeah, War Games.
Yeah, and where at the end the computer learns that nobody wins from a world war.
The only way to win is not to play.
Is that Risk?
I
you get into it and you realize, man, you know what? None of us are going to win if this happens.
I think the people who, I mentioned Monopoly earlier, the people who have the complaint about a Monopoly, I have that complaint about Risk.
Yeah.
Is eventually it just becomes a slog and it's not much fun anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's still a fun game.
It is.
It's a great way to slow a party down.
It
seems like it's a lot of fun. Everyone gets into it for a little while, and then it does kind of grow on you. And
you've had 4 beers, and you're really tired.
I really ought to be going home.
Yeah, I think we're just going to stop.
There's another party game that I really enjoyed, and it only barely makes the cut because you do have to move pieces around the board. That's Pictionary.
Yeah.
I played Pictionary for hours and hours growing up with my dad's side of the family. And I remember to this day that my dad almost disowned me because I didn't know the word navel for belly button and for ship. And he's drawn this circle with a dot in the middle of it, and I'm trying not to say breast, and I'm like, belly button. He's like, yeah, okay. And he's still trying to get me to say navel. And I just didn't know that was the word. And when my stepsister said, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, which is literally the name of my father's job title. He was a rocket scientist. So a lot of good memories for me personally, but I think it's another good party game.
Yeah, and that's another... It can get really competitive in a really good way.
Especially when couples play.
Yeah.
They start, you should know this.
Yeah, why don't you know me better? You should know when I draw a teddy bear, I mean crippling depression.
Yes, clearly. We had this conversation in the car on the way over here.
I tell you what, I'm going to go super duper old school, and I'm hoping this is a game that most people know, but I never ever knew what this game was until fairly recently, and I was introduced to it. But it's a classic game from like the 50s, and it's awesome and fun and quick and a great competitive game. Racco. Have you ever played Racco?
Racco, it sounds familiar.
So Racco is a game where you literally have a rack in front of you, and I'm stretching your how to have a board pieces thing.
A little bit, but okay.
But I don't think any more than Pictionary does. You have a rack in front of you, and you have a deck of cards. They're not normal playing cards, but it's a deck of cards. And you have to arrange, you start out with a set in front of you, and you have to, take cards and give them back, and basically have to arrange numbers in order. It's super duper basic, simple rules, but it's one of those classic, 50, Battleship or Tic-Tac-Toe, where it's fast and simple rules, and you can play 5 or 6 games within a half an hour.
And that's the thing with some of those really old games. They were built to be played a couple times a night.
Yeah, a bunch of times.
Yeah.
You're in the back of the car on your road trip on the way down Route 66, and you're playing. I don't know. So that it's got this really simple rule set that just works really well, and I think really encourages some nice competitiveness without being opposite of Risk, where you invest 4 hours in the game, and when you lose, you get really mad.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to steal any of yours, because we're probably getting into that tight niche.
Yeah, when we get to the top of the list.
I have a feeling that I think our number ones are the same.
Possibly.
So we can just hold on to that one. I'm going to throw Clue in there.
Okay, yeah.
Clue is such a classic game. It's so iconic.
Another 50s classic, yeah. Mm-hmm. Simple rules.
Simple enough rules, and I think it's replayable just because And I always thought it would be fun to just play in character a little bit, not a lot.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be, Miss Peacock, then I'm just going to be Miss Peacock. And, the weapons can change and the rooms can change and all that. So every time you play it, it seems like it's the same, but it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And then the dice can really screw you over moving from room to room. So there's a bit of challenge every time you play.
Yeah, there's some randomness to it, but there's also definitely a lot of skill and logical thinking and predicting. And
I feel like it's a game that you can get a little better at as you play it. Although there is some luck of the draw for the newbies.
Yeah, if you just can't get to the conservatory, then you just can't get to the
Just can't get to it. I keep rolling a 1. I'm stuck in that secret passage. I just can't get there. Actually played a trivia game at a local bar down the street, a restaurant down the street, and one of the questions was, this room, what does the secret passage lead to?
Yeah.
And it's one of those games where they let you know in advance some of the types of questions. And it said, oh, we were really enjoying the movie Clue. Or something about that. Something about the Clue. So my group had the year the movie came out, the names of the main actors, like everything about the movie, but nobody had anything about the board game itself. No one had even looked at the board game to see where the secret passage were. Yeah.
I tell you what, I'm gonna flip mine 1 and 2.
Okay.
And what used to be my number 1 is now my number 2.
Okay.
And my number 2 is now Axis and Allies.
Yes. I could imagine you picking that one as well. For sure.
Yeah, so it's risk taken to a substantially more complicated level. Although granted, when you talk about warboard games, there are vastly more complicated ones, insanely complicated ones compared to Axis and Allies. But compared to Risk, Axis and Allies is a lot. It's checkers to chess.
Yes,
it's a lot more complicated. There's a lot more depth to it.
I think it's still very sophisticated.
It's sophisticated, yes, compared to most board games. Absolutely, a lot of nice strategy. It's asymmetrical, which I appreciate. Not every side is equal. It's a lot of fun. I like Axis and Allies a lot. I like the theme too. I'm a history nerd, and so I like World War II and that setting.
It's a very weird version of role playing. It's like, I'm going to play a very terrible class. Maybe vilified people today, but right now I've got a strong army and I'm just going to kick butt. Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite direction.
Okay,
go a little more into the fantastical style of game.
All right,
that's Fireball Island.
Oh, nice choice. Yeah, one of my favorites in my closet.
What a beautiful game. I never got it as a child. I never woke up Christmas morning, ran downstairs, forget the bike, forget the telescope. I want to play Fireball Island.
I did. I
had that moment.
I got it for Christmas one day, ran out, and
but
it
how
was
cool.
Massive box. I mean, you've seen it. I've got it in my closet.
Huge.
It's huge. It's a huge board.
And very satisfying when that fireball starts rolling down the chasm.
And again, it's a game that's really quite simple rules-wise, but it's fun to replay. Luck of the draw changes a lot, but there's definitely a lot of strategy. And just a neat game, a neat-looking game.
It kind of reminds me of this other game. I don't remember which one it is, but there's a top that you spin at the top, and you let it go, and it spins down. It's kind of the same idea.
Tornado Rex.
Tornado Alley?
Tornado Rex.
Tornado Rex.
Yes.
Oh, because it's like
he's like a Tasmanian devil.
Yeah. And that spins around, and so it could just bypass, like it just swing around your character.
Yeah.
Just because of the way it's bouncing around, you don't know. I love those kinds of games.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my number one.
Number one?
Another kind of off-the-wall game, and if you remember this or had the chance to own it like I did, congratulations, because your childhood was great. Weapons and Warriors.
Oh, seriously?
I've got it in my closet. It's amazing. One day we should totally set it. Maybe we'll do that for later in the month. For Battle Month, we'll play a game of Weapons and Warriors. You set up a huge board, like literally it takes up your entire living room. You have little catapults, and you put little balls in them and shoot them at each other. And you're trying to one side has a castle. You're trying to defend. The other side has just like some dudes in an army. And you're trying to kill all the other little guys. You're trying to move your army up, because the closer you can get, the further you can move your weapons up.
Oh, how fun!
It's a very physical, like hands-on. There's not like a lot of luck of the draw. It's how good you are at shooting those little marbles at each other.
What was that other marble game? with the crazy, trippy, dark future commercial. You should.
Crossfire.
Crossfire.
I also had Crossfire.
You're the Crossfire. Crossfire.
Bizarre little aside just from my childhood. I'll tell it for some reason. I don't think anybody cares, but it made me think of it. That Crossfire actually led to a creation of a rule between my brother and I, which I honestly can't tell you why we named it this, but it was called the Bullwinkle Rule. Because Crossfire, you had a little board with the BBs in it, and you had a little gun attached to each side.
That's
and
right.
You would pick up the BBs with one hand, feed them in the top, and fire them. And it would jam up all the time. Mechanism, because you're pouring them in, they would jam up. So we made a rule called Bullwinkle, and if your gun jammed up, you would call Bullwinkle. And if you called Bullwinkle, the game had to stop. Mm-hmm. The other player just stopped until you could get the jam cleared in your gun.
Bullwinkle.
The Bullwinkle rule. So that's there, stop gameplay. It's like pause, stop gameplay.
But you have to have a safe word that's more...
It's a safe word. It was basically a safe word.
Stop beating me. No, I'm going to stop beating you. Bullwinkle.
No, but you couldn't call it unless your thing was jammed. Right. You couldn't just call it,
Do you only get one Bullwinkle per game? That's what I would say.
We probably did that at some point. Yeah. We probably limited the amount of Bullwinkle.
House rules.
Oh my god, that thing jammed up constantly. So it was just constantly hollering Bullwinkle.
I was kind of surprised that you didn't have the same number one as me because you reintroduced me to my number one, Hero Quest.
I thought about Hero Quest.
My gosh, could there not be a better game for anyone who wants to play D&D but doesn't have the math skills or
just doesn't want to commit to hours and hours it takes to play a D&D
character building? But what was so great about Hero Quest is it's basically the simplest rules of a Dungeons and Dragons type game with a full map, and you have a person who's the dungeon master who's got all the secrets.
Zardon.
They know what everything's going on behind the scenes. And the thing that's always bothered me about a lot of these board games is the map you give me is all that there is. Yeah. There's no way to repurpose it. But in Hero Quest, the walls, the doors change location.
You can change everything around,
Every floor of this dungeon, every special place you go to, the interior changes, and you as the dungeon master gets to repopulate it as we are able to see it.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so much fun.
Yeah, the only reason I didn't choose it is because I guess it's player versus player technically, as one player is the GM, but for the most part it's cooperative. Each player is playing a character, so I was like, I'm going to set that one.
I think of that more as it's fighting, and there is some competitive.
It's just combat. It's just a dungeon crawl.
Yeah, the last time we played it, I got a lot of treasure. I was very selective about it, but I got a lot of treasure, and I wish we had written down what we had done and our character names and everything, because
I might still have
I walked away into level 2 outfitted, ready for war.
We've got to get a group together and play a regular game of that and play through, because I've got the original game and a couple of expansions, so we've got 40 or 50 adventures to play through. So.
Yes.
And they're laid out linearly so that you can play through them.
So if we ever get stranded, snowed in one day at the same ski lodge,
play.
And I don't have any of my Pathfinder stuff, and we've got Hero Quest.
The whole book of adventures for Hero Quest.
That sounds like the best time ever. Well, I think that's going to wrap up the Battlecast, our fully battle-themed podcast for the Foundry.
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited about some of the things I'm working on. With these winter months, you're tired, you're exhausted. Just shoveling the snow off your car, working a full 8 to 10 hour day, much less if you're going to school or if you're having to run errands, do grocery shopping through this mess.
Days are shorter.
All I want to do is sleep. I just want to hibernate. I'm just like my hedgehog. I want to be warm and left alone.
Curled up in a corner, under a plastic fake house.
Yeah, but as we've talked about before, sometimes you really need to push yourself to craft, to build, to create, because if you don't, it's almost like it's going to cycle through.
Yeah.
You're going to feel bad that you're not doing anything. You're going to feel bad that you're not making something. And the way to make yourself feel better is to do it. Yeah. So I've been working real hard on a couple things the last few days, because I'd like to ultimately get to a place where later this week I can film another video that's battle-based for Crafty Bastard Games. I know you had a couple irons in the fire.
Yeah, well, actually, we recorded a brief video this evening that's probably going to be like a special bonus feature later on in the month. I've got a couple of games I'm going to be doing some playthroughs on. A couple that are older that I've had forever that I play through pretty often.
Yeah.
That I talk a lot about, and a couple of new ones that I picked up on the Steam Winter Sale. Wrapped up not too long ago, so I picked up a couple of games that I think will fit the theme that I'm going to try and do some playthroughs on. So,
and hopefully we can get our friends together, and just our associates and our colleagues to do more to collaborative, because you and I could battle each other in whatever game here and there, and I think that'd be a lot of fun. But we've got some real unique personalities in our friends that I'd love to showcase as well. So hopefully we can get them lined up for a few things here before the conclusion of Battle Month. We've still got about 20 days left to go.
Oh yeah, plenty of time in the month. We'll be having some videos up probably about the same time as this podcast is released. But then after that, definitely a lot of other things. I mean, we talked about some things here tonight that I'd like to try and do before the month's out. But yeah, I mean, it's been, as always, fun hanging out and chit-chatting, and I hope if you guys at home listening to this, you enjoyed our babbling, rambling, blambling, whatever you want to call it, and join us next time for another episode of the FoundryCast. But for this evening, I am McPherson Strut.
And I am a false positive on a high midichlorian count.
And you've been listening to the FoundryCast.
See you next time.
Good night, everybody. Speaking of Keenan and Kel. When I was a kid, we went to Florida. We went to Universal Studios, and at that time they had the Nickelodeon Studios was there. And there was the Keenan and Kel show set. And then the door opens, and out comes Keenan and Kel. But yeah, that was my Keenan and Kel story.